And we're live. Hey people, how you doing? Welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast, episode 212. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of runchatlive.com. And as always, this episode is being recorded live on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel, and also Facebook. Very shortly in this episode, entitled Exercise Prescription, Why Communication Matters, I will be joined by two special guests, founder of ProCare Sports Medicine, Andrew McCauley, and educator, facilitator and coach, Andy Hosgood. Both of these fantastic educators will be presenting in the STA Theatre at Therapy Expo this coming 27th and 28th of November, with Andrew McCauley on day one. I should bring this up for those of you joining us live. You like a little bit of images on the screen, so I'll bring this up for you. Andrew McCauley will be with us at 11:40 a.m. on day one, so that's November the 27th, giving a Q&A session on exercise dosage in clinical practice. And then Andy Hosgood will be with us at 11:40 a.m. on day two. I've kept it simple for them for reasons you understand once I bring them up. 11:40 a.m., one on day one on day two. With a Q&A session, Andy Hosgood will be talking about client retention, the superpower for business growth. Just to remind you, this year it's Therapy Expo, a lot of the sessions in the STA Theatre will be Q&A based because of the feedback we've had. We listen to you and we act accordingly. And you guys did really enjoy that interaction with the speaker. A lot of the people we've got are speaking in the main theatres, which you can go and see as well if you want to, and then get extra information in the Q&A sessions in the STA Theatre. Or if you can't manage to get to the main theatre, then the speakers realise that not everyone will have gone there, and they will be giving you enough information to turn into a fantastic Q&A session on their topic. So very much looking forward to see how that goes this November. I will be nagging you each week because it's one of the things which we've got in our notes of things to do. A lot of people leave it to the last minute. They haven't got enough money. They haven't organised clinic in their absence. They haven't sorted accommodation, etc., etc. So you've now got 11 weeks left, people. It sounds so not a lot of time when we say that, 11 weeks. So do try and make sure you got a ticket. Remember, there's an STA discount throughout. If you're struggling to find a price that suits you, then join the STA. I guarantee, without saying the price out loud, you will save more money by joining the STA and getting the discount than trying to find a cheaper ticket elsewhere. And you'll get the benefit of being a member of the STA. So that's an option for you. And sort out travel. If you're umming and ahhing about 2 days, try and do it. Just try and do it. Sort out accommodation somewhere, maybe B&Bs. Not B&Bs. What's the modern thing? B&B is only 1990s. Airbnb, that's what I'm talking about. Try and sort that out. There's some great options around, especially if you're traveling up with other people. So do try and stay for 2 days if you can. Anyway, before I do bring up Andrew and Andy, I must thank last week's guests. I always say a fantastic show last week. You need to watch it, but it really was so inspirational. As you can see, if you're joining us in YouTube Live or Facebook on the screen here, I was joined in episode 211 with Armed Forces veterans Rich Potter and Richard Dickey Davis, who in just a few weeks, literally in about 3 or 4 weeks, are about to embark on their incredible Limitless Expedition Challenge, conquering the Himalayas, which is basically they're doing the snowman trek in Bhutan to showcase the incredible capabilities of amputees and to raise vital funds for the Royal British Legion and BLESMA, the Limbless Veterans Charity. Obviously, with a topic like that, it's super emotional fueled, and we talk about with them, they both discuss how they got into the situation of being limbless. Both of them are limbless on one of their legs, and how it affected their lives, and now why they're trying to turn things around. And they talk about the Invictus Games, and indeed we talk to Carla Bickerstaff and Jenny Lane, who are both involved in preparing witches either for the challenge or also at the Invictus Games, which, in case you don't know, is an international multi-sport event, first held in 2014 for wounded, injured and sick servicemen and women, both serving and veterans. If you do fancy showing some support, and there's plenty of amazing causes out there, and it's really difficult to pick, but I would encourage you to have a little think of this. Just go along to, just do a Google search for Just Giving, either Rich Potter or Richard Davis, and you should come to one of their pages and you'll see all the details about it. Rich Potter is raising money for BLESMA, like I say, and then Rich Davis is raising money for the Royal British Legion. Doesn't matter who you give generously to, just try and give something to both of them if you can. And as always, a little bit from loads of people can make all the difference. It's a fantastic cause. So there you go. That was last week's episode, available as always on YouTube if you want to watch the video, or else your favorite podcast app, or if you like, you can go to the STA212 webpage and you can either listen to it or watch it there. There we go. Right, I've left them down in the dungeons for long enough. I'm really excited to bring up two fantastic educators from our industry. From our industry. So injury, that was a little bit of a Freudian slip. From our industry, all about injury. So let me bring up now for episode 212, Exercise Prescription, Why Communication Matters, with special guests Andrew McCauley and Andy Hosgood. Andy and Andrew, how are you doing?
Hello, good evening.
Hello there.
Confusing my lives. Last week I had Rich and Richie and Richard, and now I've got Andy and Andrew, but that's fine. I can work with that. We'll do what we can. But thanks for joining us, especially after a few little technical difficulties. Really good to see you.
Yeah, Andy
People, if you...
stuff.
Yeah, I know. We were ages when you were sorted when you first came into the room. I forgot to say, if you are joining us live, people, then do ask questions away. Both Andy and Andrew are welcome to spot good questions in the comments and say, oh, Matt, hold on a second. There's a really good question there from Nikki Mansfield, for example. Nikki, you've joined us live. Thanks for joining us. Nikki says, hey, Groovers, my name's not Andy. Can I still come in? Exactly. I'm glad I wasn't the only one who saw that. Of course you can, Nikki. Of course you can. And also Sir Glenn Murphy, MBE. I love saying that out loud. It's just the way we roll in this podcast. Sir Glenn Murphy, MBE, says, quite like calling you Andy. Nikki, I think it works. Hi all. Fantastic. And indeed, anyone who's joined us live, do feel free to ask questions. And if you listen to the podcast and you like the idea of joining us live so you can ask our guest questions, and all you got to do, like I say, is go along to either YouTube or Facebook at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday normally. And that's it. You'll find the link and you could be here too. Right then, Andrew McCauley and Andy Hosgood, how are you both?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah.
Good to see you. And Andrew?
I'm waiting my turn.
It's interesting to see like the alpha, because you're both very, I've met you both in person, it's fantastic, but you're both very strong alpha males. So it's going to be interesting today who kind of leaves the other one to kind of, yeah.
I'll let him do alpha. It's all right.
Andy's not very good at close combat, so it's, it's going to be only one winner, really.
You have both been on the show before, which is fantastic. I will mention those as and when I talk to you. But for people who don't know you, who listen to podcasts, which I always say I hope there are out of our 2,000 odd downloads, that some people don't know you, because that'd be a big waste of time, wouldn't it? Maybe Andrew McCauley, could you give us a little idea of who you are and how you've got to be doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, no problem. Andrew, physio, by trade, if you like, but I would call myself a coach probably, then a physio. Background in kind of like sports science, physio, sports medicine, and then I work across the NHS as a hip, knee and shoulder ESP, and then in private practice here in Cornwall. And then I also do a course or run a course called Unravelling Strength and Conditioning for Therapists, which across all therapists, which looks at, I suppose it's a communication and exercise prescription course, breaking down what we're going to talk about maybe later on. And then soon to be podcaster to take on you, Matt.
Oh, take me on.
Someone needs to show you what to do here, you know what I mean? So hopefully we'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's what I like doing.
Oh, for sure. And I'm looking forward to talking about that and the guests you're going to have on it. So yeah, you've been on the show before.
Yep.
For listeners who are interested, Andrew was on the show in January, earlier this year, beginning of the year, optimizing communication with clients and health professionals, which was a great show, available obviously on all podcast apps and YouTube. And also you were in the STA Theatre last Therapy Expo 2023 was Why Does Measuring Force Matter in Rehab, which was a fantastic presentation. And I've said it a few times on the show. I don't think I'd actually met you or heard much about you, which isn't an insult. It's just actually a wonderful thing, because that's what Therapy Expo does. It just introduces you to people, which was great. And I was just blown away. And it was a fantastic presentation. And of course, we had people like 𝐒𝐲𝐫𝐭𝐬 Jackson in common as well, who was there helping you. And I still remember the opening slide of I think it was a guy with something hanging from his appendage. So I really thought, yeah, this is a speaker I need to follow. So it's good to have you back on the show. Let's talk about, as we got you here then, now let's come back. Let's leave that hook there for the podcast. Let's leave that listeners there. Let's go over to Andy first of all. Andy Hosgood, you've actually been on the show 3 times. This is your 4th time now, mate. It doesn't feel like that, does it?
I don't know. I feel
does it? To me, it doesn't. I think you're up there in like the top people who've been on the show loads of times now. You'd make quite a good opening guest on a podcast, if anyone was going to start off a podcast, you'd be quite a good opening guest. Yeah, you were with us. Let's think. You were with us episode 62, which is so long ago. That was 2021, and that was with the wonderful Gemma Oliver. With you, we're talking about integration of sports therapists into physio roles, which was, I'm so proud to say we were talking about that 3 years ago, because it's I think one of the things we were talking about at Therapy Expo this year is the MSK conference, for example, is open now. Healthcare profession, people can move from one to the other. So it really is much more multidisciplinary, which I know is something you two have championed for years. And finally, it's kind of happening at Therapy Expo, which is really exciting. And thanks to people like you. And then you were here June 22, which was how to optimize client experience, again with Gemma. How is Gemma, by the way? She hasn't been on the show for a while. Gemma as well?
Good. Yeah, she's very good. Yeah. Working hard.
I'm sure I do follow her. I'm going to have to get back on the show as well. And you also here in November 23 last year, how to make sure Therapy Expo helps your business, which was a great episode as well. And a lot of people gave feedback on that. And you presented in the STA Theatre last year with how to elevate your client experience to ensure success. So quite a CV there as involvement with the STA. Some people know you with regards to co-founder of Elevate Your Clinic, which is something which I know a lot of our members have actually used in terms of mentorship and helping them improve their business. But that's kind of involved, isn't it? You've got an interesting new project coming up, which I'm interested to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of it is simply because I think one of the things that's been working very close with business owners, for the last 10 years is in that kind of, like Andrew said, more of that coaching role. As a physio by background and a business owner for 20 years, you kind of transitioned into that. And one of the things that became more and more apparent was the importance of optimizing and finding the super of the business owner. So that the whole idea is really to focus down on, how does the business owner, unlock their own potential and superpower. And then how does that, because that integrates then, doesn't it, into creating a good business and then into creating a good team. But it always starts with them. And I think a lot of the focus we always spent a lot of the time was on the business, where actually I think what we probably didn't always evaluate was the business owner themselves. So that's the project, really focusing on the actual owner and making sure that they are healthy while running the business, which I think is massively important as well.
Sounds very exciting. And it's something which on the show we say time and time again. I think therapists are slowly realizing when it comes to CPD, don't just choose something else you can do with your hands. You can do it if you want, if you feel you need to add something, but look at business skills, look at that side of thing, which traditionally I think particularly soft tissue therapists have kind of ignored. They just think if they fix enough people as well as possible, then people are going to be queuing up. But it is a business at the end of the day. And you don't learn these skills on courses, do you? You don't normally learn these. You need people like yourself to actually shine and help people along with their businesses. So I just want to bring out a screenshot for people who joined us live. So yeah, there's the exciting artwork for it. Unlock with Andy Hosgood. Very nice. I can see what you've done there with the end. That's very cool. And so if you do go to andyhosgood.co.uk, you can see there's an email if you're interested, hello@andyhosgood.co.uk. But also you're quite active. You started Instagram as well now, so we'll give those details out later on. But yeah, exciting project, man. Looking forward to seeing it progress.
As just as well, Matt, on that, if you don't mind me saying, because I've had firsthand of what Andy does, and it can be an uncomfortable decision to make to bring somebody in and be vulnerable, especially around your business. But it's hands down the number one thing you should do before starting a business or in the middle of running a business. It will, and that I suppose that's what again bigging up Andy, because I don't like to do that too much, but that takes a skill that's very rare to find, and like whether it's just because you have to find, it's like a counselor or a coach, you find the right one, and the next thing you can feel vulnerable, and especially around a business which you've built, and you don't want to seem stupid and you don't want to seem like you've made mistakes. But that's exactly the word unlock helps you to just go, okay, yeah, cool. I'm open to suggestions now and progressing. And I can't recommend him enough for that.
That's really cool. And it's really interesting and inspiring to hear you admit that it is scary, and therapists who are scared and don't like the idea of having to open up and admit what they've done wrong, what they don't know. Hopefully that instills you a bit of confidence. How do you do that actually, Andy Hosgood? How do you if someone comes, they are scared, they don't want to open up and they're thinking, oh, you're going to think I'm such an idiot. How do you help that kind of person?
Matt, Mr. McCauley will laugh at this. It's about being curious, isn't it? You know, and I think that is, you know, fundamentally, I think that is my, as an individual, it's something that is my natural nature, is to be curious of why people feel they want to do. And I think for me, it goes back to being a therapist that we all are. You know, how do we, when we walk into a room for the very first time, we've got somebody that is often in pain or has got something wrong with them, and they're anxious, they might be fearful, they might be very emotional about what's going to happen. And I think, so all I do is apply the skills that I've learned as a clinician and just apply it in the same principles of like, can we make an environment where we can create good rapport, we can create a safe environment where people realize that actually they're not going to be judged on what they say. And I think if you can create that environment and create that very quickly, and hopefully that's something I'm quite good at, that, you know, you allow people to then open up. And I think once people start opening up and feel comfortable, you know, a lot of the times we're all guilty of it, aren't we? We have something in us, we say it out loud within a safe space, and actually it feels good to say, and it actually is quite refreshing and allows us to do stuff. And actually it's the one thing that allows us to move forward. So I would say, you know, and everyone's got those skills and things, clinicians, and well, if they haven't got them skills, then I'll have to co-thing, and so you have to, like, obviously go on Mr. McCauley's course and learn how to communicate better, don't you?
A good start, wouldn't it? Yeah, for example.
Yeah.
That's great. Just listening to you there is people can get a great idea of it, and it's so important. It's so very, very important. Claire Boucher. Oh, here we go. I've got speakers, other speakers from the STA Theatre joining us tonight. Listen to you guys there. Hey, Claire, thanks for joining us. Is it a competition, Matt? I really can't remember what you're referring to now. I think maybe it was, what's the name of the podcast or something? But yeah, I can't remember. That was too long ago, Claire. So
probably between me and Andy, and again,
the alpha male thing, and yeah,
close combat skills.
Okay,
I know what you're saying, Claire. I know.
Claire is going to be speaking in the STA Theatre and is going to be a guest on the podcast soon. Very excited, all about fascia. Which, again, if you're interested in fascia, you know what? For me, because I've been through the myth busting 10 years ago, I was at Therapy Expo, almost laughing at people doing total Adam Beacons and thinking I was actually not slagging off Adam too much, but I was there and just shouting in capital letters, and I realised it didn't really work. So I'm really keen now on people who think all of these things are myth to come back and reassess what they were like 10 years ago. And fascia is one of those areas where you need to, because we've all been talking about the 𝐒𝐻𝐲 paper and how it takes this amount of newtons to change this amount of fascia, and it's only done on the nasal fascia and stuff, and kind of laughed and poo-pooed it all. But we went a bit too far. And if you're interested in fascia, not swinging the pendulum too far one way, but coming back a little bit, which I think a lot of clinicians need to do, then Claire Boucher is your person. There's a great episode already. I can't remember which one it is, but Claire's going to be back on the show, and she's going to be at Therapy Expo as well, talking about that with us, which I think is really cool, because anywhere we kind of retrace our steps and think, oh, maybe I went a bit too gung-ho on that particular belief, which I think we all did in about 2013, then I think that's good to make you a better clinician. So thanks for joining us, Claire, and we'll see you soon. Right. Let's bring this up, man, because Teacup, what a great name. The Teacup podcast, which is going to be coming out when, Andrew? And why Teacup?
Great question about when. And Andy's going to be like, I like to say that Andy puts the boot into my neck just when I need, but in a friendly way. So I can tap out if I'd like, but so with a busy lifestyle, the plan is I've already done 2. There's a bunch of people waiting to do more, so and they'll be out I'm hoping October, Matt, but all the socials will come up. I'm working on that this month, but I've had 2 really good episodes so far. I did my one earlier on with Ben Cormack, and then with Andy, my first one, and I suppose where did it come from was it was down to Andy as well to some degree. It was a lot to degree. It was inside me, and I was kind of like, how do I have a certain way of looking at healthcare, and I want to try to help people who are interested in the type of healthcare I like, which is good coaching, good communication, and getting people where they want to be. And I just think in this space, communication is undervalued. And I had this conversation with Ben earlier on, and we were like, for some reason, communication we know is so important, but people still undervalue it. And we kind of came to the conclusion it's very difficult, and it's very difficult. It's not tangible, unlike other treatment techniques we have, obviously, and how do you measure it, and people struggle with it, I think. So what I wanted to do is like, how do you have a therapeutic conversation? We all see patients, we all have to get information from them, we all have to hopefully build connection and trust with them, but every patient's that little bit, that one, like you might see somebody with osteoarthritis, and I'll have a clinic of that, all knee arthritis patients, but all the conversations are different. And what makes those conversations difficult, and how do you unlock these people, to use Andy's term as well? And that's what I want to have, those conversations with people who are interested in this area, and the anecdotes and the stories, and to really pick apart why it's not popular, if you like, or why other forms of treatment is more popular than being a good coach or a good communicator. And I think that can only happen in the nature of communication by having conversations. So hopefully people listening in, I want it to be fun. I want it to be a podcast that people can kind of watch and listen in the car and not have to take a million notes, but at the same time finish the podcast and think, shit, you know, I've learned something that's really useful, and hopefully just walk into the next person they see and communicate differently, or maybe they'll treat the patients differently, or maybe they'll go and look up something regarding communication or coaching, or maybe they'll do something like that. So it's not like busting you with evidence, but at the same time, hopefully you come away with something that you enjoy it, basically.
Sounds amazing. Sounds great. You know, just when we think there's too many podcasts out there, I think you've nailed it. You've got something which is like, this is something which isn't really being done. And we all talk about, oh, it's so important to listen. It's like, yeah, but skills, or what does that mean, or when and why, and can you over listen and stuff? So yeah, brilliant.
I think I just on that point, that's the thing, is there's nuances, isn't it, in all that kind of stuff. People can, as Ben was saying, again, it's a great episode, so you need to listen to it out there. The lip service to this. Like every course you go on, it's really important to listen. It's really important. Everybody on courses, including on other people I've talked about, they'll all say what makes a good therapist, and they'll all say those good things, and all the nearly like, oh yeah, I'll listen and I'll be empathic and I'll do it. But it's lip service, I think, in some ways, because it reflects on therapists often saying they don't really either go into communication training formally or are interested themselves, because again, for some reason, there's an undervalue to it. And I think the other thing is, as well, is no one really thinks they're crap at communication or wants to think that they are. And I think that's a vulnerable thing. Again, linking back to what Andy was, Andy's job, as you say, is very similar. Mm-hmm. It's just that vulnerability around, you know what, if you listen to yourself back sometimes and you don't have that awareness, you know, there is some crap communicators out there. And I'm certainly not coming from a point of view of thinking I'm brilliant. But I do certainly self-reflect a lot to try and change it, and I think that's why I wanted to set this up, to hopefully be slightly different than just, here's the evidence around communication, you should do it, but see you later.
Sounds really good, and you took the words out of my mouth. It really ties back to the whole idea of mentorship and having someone just listen to you and give you honest feedback at the right time, which you can react to.
Can I jump in? But I think it also comes, and I think one of the things that Andrew's done very, very well, and I think where the philosophy will be really helpful to listeners when they do listen, it is the ability, and I think of all therapists, we, let's go back to this vulnerability factor. And I think we have that generally from the, going back to our school days, we're afraid to put our hand up and ask a question because of what we're going to be mocked. Because oh God, you don't get it, and I still think that goes through university, and especially from physiotherapy and sports. All of these things, there is this element of don't want to be viewed by peers, and I think one of the things that Andrew has created and will create and is going to go on to create is the fact that it's people that are comfortable saying I was crap or I was less good. And I had to work hard to become it, but this is what I did, and this is how my then client outcomes or patient outcomes got better because of this.
Sounds great. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope it comes out in October. Really excited, and obviously we will let STA members know when it is out, and hopefully have you back on the show once you've had a few guests in to hear how it's going and what the reception's like. Sounds really good.
Thank you.
Right, look, we're half past, so let's turn our attention to what was advertised on the tin tonight. Exercise prescription, why communication matters. So we've talked about communication and we've given some great examples, but we're going to try and link it in now to when it comes to prescribing exercise. So let's Andrew at the Therapy Expo this year just to remind people what you're going to be doing. You're going to be talking about, let's just get this right. So you're actually going to be earlier on in the theatre talking about, what was the name of the thing? Something about Italian. What did you say? I can't find it at the moment.
Exercise prescription, why most people are Italian.
Great. Now we're going to leave that as a little bit of a hook and not explain too much what that is implying, that title. But what do you think, Pete? What would you say to listeners who are thinking, oh, I might go along to that? What are they going to gain from going along to that main theatre presentation?
Yeah, look, an observation I make or have made and had discussions about with many therapists over years is what's one of the big problems we have around exercise prescription, and it's often the thing that comes back is that the commitment to it, or over prescription, under prescription. Patients not coming back and potentially doing it, and that's the kind of age-old problem that therapists will say, or they'll say they haven't got time, or they'll struggle with the time to get everything in, and that also kind of leaks into sometimes throwaway exercise prescription, like, oh, by the way, here's the exercise, out the door, and they come back and it doesn't quite work like that. So I was kind of looking at, so how do we have kind of tools sometimes for clinical reasoning around a shoulder problem or a back problem. We kind of have questions and we kind of ideas and subjective kind of ways of looking at patterns of pathology or whatever might have happened, or looking into the history to find clues. But do we have those same questions and those same ideas around exercise prescription? And how does that link to the evidence that we have around it? So what I wanted to do then is, and I think what works really well is, have we got some kind of sort of system that you can use, or in my case, a metaphor or metaphors that we can use to kind of say, when I've got a patient in front of me, how can I maybe, and I'm not saying we do this for, we can subgroup people. We can kind of think, well, actually, they're falling into this kind of category because they're telling me this information, which is then allowing me to be able to say, you know what, I only need 5 minutes at the end of this hour I have to be able to give, because I know it's only going to take me 5 minutes. So within that first 15, 20 minutes, sometimes in a subjective, you're already kind of making an idea that you will only maybe need to give somebody one exercise or 5, or you might just need to give them reassurance and maybe wait till the next appointment because of the way they're telling you. So I thought, well, how do I identify those things? And therefore, once I have that, I can sit back and not be in a rush to kind of nearly speed up my communication to find all the answers. So then I go, right, now I've got my 10 minutes to do my exercise, and next thing you know, it's a sheet and you're out the door, or a link. The new one is a link to a website to then look up your exercise. So that in a nutshell is I'm trying to help therapists nearly calm down their own speed, because again, if they're in a rush to try and communicate this across, they won't listen well. And if they don't listen well, then they won't be able to work out what will work for that patient, or how much time that patient can have, et cetera, et cetera. And so the dosage comes from the ability to listen, but that allows you then to buy time down the line so you don't panic and rush your questions.
Brilliant. Wonderfully explained. And it is so important, isn't it? Because we know that one of the biggest problems therapists face is non-adherence to doing what their kind of patients are being told to do. But then we tend historically to say, oh, they haven't done their exercises. How do they hope to get better if they don't do their exercises? But what you're suggesting is it's our job, to actually make sure the patient hears what we're saying and are given something that's sensible for them, as opposed to just a sheet or, like you say, a link. It needs to truly be individualized.
It is, and certainly what's really important within that is that collaboration as well. Mm-hmm. So the discussion then allows you to be able to work out what their normal week looks like. Because look, patients, my talk the year before was why patients are liars. Now we're all liars. We've got evidence for that. We all lie to each other. Men lie 3 times within the first 10 minutes of meeting somebody new. So men are just, really bad at telling lies, especially about themselves. So patients will come in desperate to get better, desperate to be out of pain. And they'll say things like, I'll do whatever it takes. And, you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And then when you actually break down their week and you start looking at it, you soon find out that there's no time here. you're not going to leave your child from being fed to do the exercises. That's not going to happen. You're not going to not go to work. You're not going to. So all these things that patients say they will do, it's kind of up to us to kind of go, yeah, that makes sense, but where are we going to put this? And to kind of unravel their kind of thinking around it, because they are desperate, they're anxious, they want to be out of pain. So again, it comes down to the communication of being able to understand that, to then say, okay, look, I know you want to do loads of things, but let's maybe start here, and this might be why it would fit. What do you think? So there's definitely a collaboration that you want, so that everyone's agreed on what we're going to do, and then it's a form of what you would say in coaching, contracting them, so that they have that kind of commitment now. And then it's like, right, okay, so this is what we're going to do. So when you come back, we know we're clear, and we fitted it in your lifestyle. So yeah, that's how I hopefully that's what I wanted. And then that would be good in the SDA stuff, Q&As around that. So people come to the talk, and then we can definitely open up on some of those kind of metaphors and hopefully answer some questions.
I wonder whether, I don't know, because you're both from a physio background. Well, I say you're both from a physio background. You did, just go back to your history a bit. You actually did Masters in Sports and Exercise Medicine, didn't you? So as well as physiotherapy and your sport.
Yeah, strength and conditioning qualification as well over in America, CSCS and things, yeah.
So it's definitely not, sometimes we get letters saying, why did you just have physios on the show? And it's not the case at all, people. It's not, a lot of them are physiotherapists, but they've done a lot more as well. So, but I'm wondering whether one of the issues with soft tissue therapy, particularly if you've gone down like a sports massage route, even sports therapy, is a lot of the focus and training is on what you're doing with your hands and fixing and mending and that sort of stuff. And that kind of overshadows exercise prescription, apart from with sports rehab degrees and things where the focus is on the exercises. But I wonder whether you get the impression that a lot of the time you have to, almost like a Bruce Lee analogy of empty the glass of a lot of water before you can start filling it up again, because we're taught pretty badly, if you look at traditional ways of teaching, where the exercise prescription and the chat comes at the end, like you say, whereas really it should be from as soon as you start, isn't it? You've got education going on as opposed to fixing people.
Yeah, and like just soft tissue therapists have come on my course, for example, and it like I think we talked about this before. So like obviously there's forms of communication, hands-on therapy. Again, there's a trust built in there. There's maybe calming down of pain. There's a relaxation of anxiety, which we know happens, and therefore they're actually in a really good position to maybe say, well, do you want to try something now? So exercise can come in there. So it's just a different approach, but very similar idea, that you're working on that idea of still being able to figure out this patient. And some people like to be talked to during it, and if they are, then you can really start to get a little bit more information from them, so that you can do that at the end of your massage therapy or whatever you're doing that way. From a physical point of view, it doesn't really matter. It's just another form of communication, in my opinion.
That's really cool. That should be really nice for manual therapists in particular to hear, because it's not that we're saying stop doing your manual therapy. It's just what you're doing can work in different ways, especially when it's talking to getting that alliance, like you say, and you haven't got to throw it all out and give up your career. Far from it, because if you're an expert in relaxing people down and getting them to be more receptive, wow, there's something there which healthcare really needs. Andy, this almost sounds like magic to you, the idea of promoting communication to help people actually listen and hear and do their exercises. Is it something that you see when you're mentoring and coaching that's needed?
Well, yeah, because I think it sits into, and for me, from a business perspective, everything needs to be around, number one is expectation matching. So, what Andrew's talking about there is understanding what the patient wants from the session as well. And then how do we, behave in a way to match that expectation? And that creates that initial rapport, doesn't it? Which then creates the likelihood that someone's going to return back to your business and return your business. So, and I think there's that ability to communicate well is only going to build that relationship better. And, as you're aware, my talk at Therapeutic is on client retention. And I think it's one of the biggest things that we spend a lot of time working with the business owners. Now, normally the business owner is very good at this, and it's something that they have built a business on and become very successful. But they're not always aware of that. And that's the part that, okay, we talk about the unlocking the superpower. They actually realize that they're very good at it because they've got the communication skills. But when they don't have the self-awareness they're good at it, they don't then pass that on. So one of the things I think what's excellent from what Andrew was saying there is I think from a customer experience perspective, you know, if you can come in and you are emotional and you can be reassured and you can talk at the level that you're ready for, because again, that's part of the problem, isn't it? It's you know, you know, everyone, if it's day one, they might only be emotionally ready to take away one thing, whereas once they've built that trust and rapport, and it might be the second or third session, they might be able to take more information on or take more exercises on because the trust is there and they believe more in their body and that. So that certainly for me is one of the superpowers that we can really explore with business owners is how do we kind of unlock that within a business? Yeah.
I think that's really useful as well, because it is a struggle for therapists out there. Healthcare is not really a place where you're going to make loads of money, because you don't do it for that. You do it to get thank yous and feel good about yourself, to help people. I mean, but you still need to make a living. And I think therapists do struggle because they don't realize this. They were never taught it, sadly. One day, hopefully, it'll be included more in courses. But if you haven't got that client retention happening, then your business is pretty much got a pretty poor trajectory, hasn't it? It's going to go downhill if you're just basing it on having ultimate success by doing what you always do with every single client.
Well, then all your focus is on continually trying to get new patients in. And then, you know, one of the big things is that we spend a lot of time with owners is, you know, and to sit into this kind of healthcare model of, you know, what are the outcomes? Are we actually matching people? Now that might be paying outcomes, or it might just be, are the patients getting what they want? And, you know, what's the feedback? You know, one of the big things that was really interesting when we look at businesses is what is the actual feedback from the patients, and can we survey them to understand are we actually matching what we think we are, or are, you know, just because the patient doesn't come back, are we making huge assumptions that we've done a good job? You know, do we ever follow up in 6 months just to say, actually, how are you getting on? You know, or have they gone to the other clinic down the road because actually they never got better? We didn't follow up with them and we didn't really understand what their problems were and give them what we needed, so they went somewhere else. You know, so I think it's really, really, really important that we, you know, we look at a client and that client journey. If we care, you know, fundamentally we all come into this because, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Oh, yeah. Automatically, Andrew McCauley, when his name comes up, there's a bit maybe swearing on this episode. Go for it.
So generally, I think the reason why we all get on is because we give a shit, don't we? Do you know what I mean? And we generally care about the patient in front of us. You know, we really generally care about the human being that is in that uncomfortable position. And I generally think most therapists do. My challenge always is, you know, are we ethically treating patients by actually not taking the time to listen, not asking the right questions, not asking what they want from us, and then showing them how, and then how do we support them on that journey correctly? I think that for me, and also, you know, it's one of my things that we talk about an awful lot with customer experience, and I think I've talked about this at one of the expos, is about expectation matching. So for, again, you know, if you generally a patient, you want to come in and you want to spend, you know, somebody just having some deep tissue work, and you go in to see somebody that doesn't do that and is just going to give you exercises, you're going to be mismatched, aren't you? And unfortunately, that's going to create quite an uncomfortable conversation. Whereas if you're generally looking, you're into your exercise in your gym and you want to be thinking about how to train better and stuff, but you don't get that, again, there's a mismatch and it's a complete breakdown. So communication through the whole experience, even through your marketing, for me is just paramount for success.
Fantastic, great points. We've got a question here coming. Yeah, go for it, Andrew.
I think I was just going to cue you in case you hadn't seen it. Claire, from Claire,
fantastic. Yeah, from Claire. Let's bring this up on the screen for those of you who are watching the live show. Claire Boucher says, how are you finding the needs and requirements of communication have changed in exercise prescription, particularly since we have shifted to a more remote blended approach?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think you'll see, particularly in the US, they've really adapted this from personal training. So personal trainers have been miles ahead of us therapists in this game, which is the idea that you can coach people remotely and set up exercise programs. I've been on the receiving end of that. A few years ago, I got a free 3-month trial with a coach, and I was blown away by her ability to kind of contract me. I actually signed a contract at the end to say so I had to tell her what I wanted out of the sessions, and then sign it to say that was it. So it was really, really kind of hardcore accountability, which which I found really interesting. It's not for everyone, but I guess you don't sign up to something like that if you're not going to do something like this. So around that, it was interesting to kind of like, she set the program, the exercises were there. I go on an app, I do the workout, and then I report back how I got on with the workout. And I was kind of like, and then she would once a week come on with a video that wasn't live. I didn't have to speak to her. She would give me some feedback all on that, and if there was any help or any questions or anything like that. And that happened for 3 months, and I made amazing progress. I did really well, and I enjoyed it, and it was free. So again, at the end of the day, but she would normally charge for that a certain price. And so what amazed me was I was going, there is probably a group of patients that will do really well for that kind of accountability, that kind of reporting, and that therapists, often think they need to see people and need to be doing things to them or having that face-to-face communication, which I agree with. At times, for the right people, you need to do that. But there's so much stuff that people just want, that like little check-in, that little bit of being able to kind of say, yeah, I'm doing what I said I was going to do. You'll get a subset of patients who will pay definitely for that. And I know it's not all about paying, but we're really crap at charging for our time, hence why we run ourselves into the ground. So sometimes it's a bit like, actually, you know what? I could see patients half the morning, maybe face-to-face, and that can be quite tiring. But then I might have maybe an afternoon of maybe some more phone calls or video calls, and they are definitely easier, but you can still apply the same skills. And I think it's the same idea. Like for some people that will work brilliantly. So the question was kind of like, since we shifted to more how are you finding this needs and requirements? I think you have to be, again, confident in being able to use that medium. So again, I think I did online teaching. I did a 2-day on my course, 2 days online. I was absolutely wiped out by the end of it. It was like talking to my slides until the breaks or maybe the odd question. Oh my God, it was really tough going. Webinars, fine, a couple of hours and stuff. But even still, I did a webinar last week, 3 hours, some questions at the end, and there was nothing. Dead space, no interaction, no, you know what I mean? Just that's the way it is. There's no one, you don't see anyone, you don't see any body language. So you have to be, and at the end of that, sometimes mentally I was really drained and really struggled. And I was like, oh my God, this isn't for me at all. I do a face-to-face lecture and I'm absolutely buzzing. I love it because I can completely work the audience if I want to. So you do need to get comfortable with certain ways of communication. And I found the more you do it, the kind of little nuances you find, think this is how I manage people online. But the same principles apply. You get in their story. You're looking at the situation. Both people know the situation. You're online. There's no expectation other than that. And I think just being confident around that. And I think it's a really nice blend. I think it give therapists a little bit of a break mentally. So I don't know if that answers your question, Claire, but hopefully that makes sense.
Great question, Claire. Yeah, feel free to follow. Oh, you have already. Look fast on that keyboard, Claire. Claire says, absolutely understand that mental fatigue when teaching online. Yeah. No, great answer. Feel free to do a follow-up question if you like, Claire. I wonder whether, I was thinking as you were talking then, is there, now that generally we are less inclined to believe that all the time how someone's doing their squat or how someone's doing that particular exercise, that they have to be doing it well and perfect and symmetrically, kind of like it says in the textbook. Now we're kind of downplaying that a little bit. Does that provide more room now for people to appreciate that it's more to do with how we're explaining this exercise and whether the client is receptive? Have we now got more time as therapists, as long as we're kind of putting aside that importance for the correct form when they're doing the exercise? Is that where kind of it's shifting a little bit? It's kind of like, if you imagine a scale.
Andy answers as well, but yeah, like in a nutshell, yeah, we're getting away from there's a right way to do things and there's not a right way to communicate. Like, and I love Andy's one where I'm definitely robbing this from a course on Friday, which is that, you come into a room of people, I don't expect everyone to look the same. And therefore, I don't expect everyone to also think the same or listen the same. If I butchered your quote, Andy. But you get that, and when you say that, you're thinking, yeah, of course. So why would they learn, the same, and why would they listen the same? So I think that's a really important kind of thing to always recognize that we are moving towards that kind of like exercise is not, yes, this is the right way and format, because actually I've seen people do a deadlift in many different ways and either performance improves, pain decreases, or vice versa. And I think it breaks down fear, and we don't have any clear evidence, especially around pain, around these things, like you've just been alluding to. I don't want to kind of say exactly what you just said, but the idea, it does make it easier, but you still having to figure out, you can still send videos, you can still, like, WhatsApp is great for stuff like that if you're in private practice. So, and if you're not sure about it, and again, you can play with movement quite easily online as well. You can watch things. I think you're right. I think it's just the fact that we're moving away from there's the right way to do things. It's the right way for that person. It's a bit like diets.
But also I think it allows you to be flexible for the person as well, doesn't it? Because, one of the, especially where you are, where if you're a little bit more remote, people might have to travel further, or, or there are so many kind of different ways. And I think whereas before technology, everyone was a bit shy, you could argue, and especially if we're going to stereotype an older population, but I think now everybody, is familiar with technology in the right way. If it is, video calls, and actually, if what we're saying is sometimes it's just about progressing an exercise, giving some confidence, and it might just be a phone call to say, actually, that's brilliant, you've done that well. Why not try a little bit more weight, a few more reps, maybe a little bit more intensity? Then actually, that can be a business model that can be. And I think what we've realized is that this traditional model of having to turn up to clinic for half an hour of a session to go through the whole thing, what technology's changed, and lots of the platforms, and especially that what we're using as well. A patient might just need a 15-minute check-in and a new program, like you're saying, Andrew, with the programming and stuff. If it might just be, what do we need to do with sets and jets and loads and all the kind of things.
That's what I call in my talk Mexican food.
There's going to be references to it. There you go.
So,
I can't wait for that book.
Link it in.
Yeah, Claire, the teacup reference is because, sorry, Nikki, is it Nikki? Sorry.
Yes.
Nikki, it's called Therapeutic Conversations Unravelled podcast. So it rolls off the tongue really easy, Nikki. Hence, it happened. It ended up being teacup, which I thought was quite good. We were having a cup of tea and having a conversation.
It's a good one. It's very good. And Claire, actually, Nikki said previous to that, Nikki brings up a great point. She says, that was a great point. Thanks, Andrew, about clients' receptivity changing over the course of treatments. I'm definitely guilty of trying to give too much in the first session, sometimes not enough. So I guess that's a really good, interesting point, which you made about exercise prescription is, unless you're communicating, which obviously is listening as well as talking in the right way, you're not adjusting the prescription you're giving out to match how that person is feeling on that particular day. So tell us a little bit more about that, if you could.
Could you just repeat that again, just so I get the right question? Sorry.
You kind of touched on it before, but how a client's receptivity can change from day to day. And unless you're reading that by communicating well with them, you may well be giving out an exercise prescription that worked perfectly with the other client or with that individual last week. But because you're not picking up on it, give us like maybe have you got a case history of an example of where that can go wrong? If you're not listening to them and watching them?
Yeah, I'd love to a patient pop into my head, but I suppose I'll come back to that hopefully via this, if this makes sense. So like, I think what I try and do for my own brain, and this is why I try and educate this way to see if people also agree with it and find it useful, is I'm straight away, what I want to do is every individual patient I see, I want to explore them. I want to explore their world as much as I can. So explore is my first thing, and be interested. I'm interested in people, and that's why I do my job. So that's what I hopefully I'm going to do really good at. And once I've learned that that's actually one of my decent skills, once I've learned that, actually, because again, that's not really taught in uni. It taught like what you know and what you remember. And I used to go in like fucking, what the red flags? Did you have night pain? I didn't even realize what I was saying. Whereas when I went in, once I qualified, I'd relax and I explore people. And I was like, oh, I like this job. I hated the job as a student, and I suddenly love the job now. It was literally night and day like that. Thank God. Fucking 10 grand later, and you'd be like, I would have been, I hate this job, but I didn't. And I think that exploration allows you to go in the individual, like whether the diagnosis is there, the connection then is the next bit. So it's that trying to build that connection as fast as I can. And then I suppose once you've done that, the exercises kind of just fall into place, really. They allow you then to kind of go like, it makes sense that might be the way you go. So like I prescribe squats to loads of people, or sit to stand, doesn't matter what you want to call it, to loads of people. But it's like I could even tell you my 10 most common exercises. The exercises rarely change, to be honest. They're all similar, but it's just how they're going to be able to use maybe progressive overload. So how are they going to be able to push this on? So if I give them an exercise and it's strength based, how am I going to push that later on down the line? So I'm trying to look at what if they say to me they go to a gym versus they hate gyms. Then that's going to be the one who loves to go to the gym. Like extensions are going to be on the prescription. Ones who don't, then something else is going to have to happen. So I suppose the question, if you get that wrong, I suppose the outcome of that is DNA, they don't turn up, or they don't do what you said, or they come back in worse pain, or whatever it might be. So it will come back at you one way or the other in that form. So it's again, I'm just kind of going over that idea that you just need those things nailed. And then I would say in that exploration phase, you find out the most important thing, I think, which is what people want. They really desire what they want to get back to, whatever that is. And it's clear across some of the longest going studies we want meaning, and we want to determine that as quickly as possible. And if you can do that and you can find that out for the patient, and it's not just get out of pain, by the way, it's often walking on the beach, walking a dog, playing a guitar. And as soon as you can identify that, I would build a rehab program around that. That's how I do it. That's how I think works really well in a lot of cases.
We call that the emotional hook. So it's what is the one thing that they're so emotional about that they'll use that as a goal to go and achieve. Yeah,
exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, I love it. I love both of those. Yeah. So
he said it in like 2 sentences, and I said it in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, he's yeah. They just
the Irish and the Scouser.
hate you for that.
It's like if you ask an Irish person for directions, we'll tell you a story as opposed to where you're actually going. But at least it'll be entertaining, hopefully.
I think I can't believe we're already running out of time, but I'd like to just maybe the temptation. Do you find the temptation sometimes as therapists feel that all of this communication clever stuff is when it's a new client, it's the first time you meet them, but to a certain extent, I suppose this needs to be repeating itself every single session because the client could be in a different state of mind every single session. Do you find that's something that the therapists need to think about and remind themselves? Andy, over to you because we've only got 5 minutes. So.
Yeah, well, it's all right. He's doing such a good job, though, isn't he?
Oh, it's amazing. I love hearing him talk.
Entertaining.
It's quite entertaining. Sorry about the patronising comment there, Andy, but yeah, it's quite.
I'm used to it.
No, he's very helpful. No, I think one of the things, but again, we all are, and I think one of the things we've got to accept is a patient is a human first. We don't know how they've got there. They could have had an argument with their kid on the way in, the husband on the way in, the wife on the way in. They could have just been found out something bad at work and becoming made redundant. There's so many emotions that we carry with us all of the time as humans that we're always in a different state, aren't we? Like Andrew said, it could be one of those things. They've done really, really well with the first load. They've started to load or even started running again. They've had a bad episode running, or they've kind of felt a niggle and they've gone, oh God, it's come all the way back. And all those emotions sit in them all the time. So I think the first thing you have to do in any human interaction is just check in to see where they're at. And then, but also I think it's also important as a therapist that we check in where we are. And I think we've got to make sure that we're also self-aware of where we're at, because we could have had those arguments and those conversations or be stuck in traffic or forgotten our dinner and be starving, or, if you've got young kids, not slept well at night. Well, there's so many different things, and our patients are in exactly the same shoes. So I think it's always important that we just make sure we check in for that first 5 minutes before we start making any decisions.
It's very good. You guys speak such sense. Can't wait to Therapy Expo. That's great. No, it's great. It's so nice sitting back listening to you. That's why sometimes I'm pausing before. Normally I'm thinking, right, next question. With you guys, I'm switching off a little bit because it's just I'm excited about what you're going to say next.
It flips it to what we said on the podcast I did with you last, Matt, which you said you were going to get a T-shirt with this on, which was when I get patients come back, like what Andy was saying, is like when they've done a lot of physios or therapists, I deal with physios, but therapists will get the patient back in. Is like, how the exercises go, and it's kind of skipped on quite quickly, or they just add more. So that's the other problem, is they just kind of go, right, well, let's just give you more because I need to do something, because I need to show you that I'm giving you shit to do or doing something to you. All that and there's a pressure there. But like, I often give them the _𝐒𝐻𝐶 test, like, so is there any exercises that you'd rather drink _𝐻𝐶 or carry on with these exercises? Which and you'll see them going, oh yeah, it's the fucking hamstring sliders. I hate them. Can I burn them? And I'm like, yeah, burn them. I'm not a slave to any exercise. So, but that's the check-in with them. And I think as well, like Andy's alluding to, that there's a trust build in that. It's a bit like, oh, he's fucking sound man, that guy. He's taking away this thing, because I really want to do what he said he wants to do. And some people are really battle against it. They're like, no, I'll keep them. I'm like going, okay, keep them if you want, but we can find another way around this. And again, that's another form of like communication that just builds people like going, okay. And even if they think, no, you're right, I'll stick with this, I'm all right with that, but I'm glad you just said it's okay maybe not to do it. There's not that forced. Brilliant. So you can always find ways of just fine tuning how you exercise. And that chat could be 5 minutes. You could have great crack with them. They could be laughing and all that. And that's taking up your time, but that's valuable time. And actually all you needed to do in the exercise was, actually, we're just going to do it like this speed, or we're going to just add this load here, and it's just a little tweak, Mexican food. And then we're going to go, they walk out going, brilliant, he's not giving me any more. I actually can tolerate what he's giving me, but it's a little bit harder, for example.
Excellent. Yeah, the _𝐻𝐶 test. So just to get that right, in case listeners didn't catch it, you ask your client, is there anything I've given you where you'd prefer to eat _𝐻𝐶 than continue doing drink _𝐻𝐶, or a straw for the hard bits, whatever it is. Yeah, great. Fantastic. He swigs back on. If he listens to the podcast, he just swig back on his vat of _𝐻𝐶.
I'm a little vat of _𝐻𝐶.
Brilliant. It's such a shame it's 9 o'clock. So there's so much more we could talk about. But okay, let's get this into perspective. It is only an hour show, people. Right, points I need to cover. Where people can get more information about this. Obviously, let's just remind listeners about Therapy Expo, because if you are coming to Therapy Expo, maybe you're thinking, I should go to Therapy Expo now. Let's just bring that up so we've made sure that people are clear on that. So I've got Andy Hosgood on the screen first. So that's going to be the 28th, which is day 2 at 11:40 to 12:05 in the STA Theatre. Client retention, the superpower for business growth, and that's going to be a Q&A session. So there you go. That is where Andy will be at Therapy Expo. And then also on the 27th, which is day 1 at the same time, 11:40 a.m., you've got Andrew McCauley with exercise dosage and clinical practice Q&A session. And that's going to kind of follow on. If you're into Andrew, which I can totally understand, then you may want to go to Theatre A at 10:20 on that same day for MSK Rehab Reasoning with Why Everyone is Italian. Have a double dose of Andrew. Nasty.
Tasty.
But apart from those two, I just want to make sure that therapists are aware of the very exciting stuff which you guys have got happening. Obviously, Andrew, you've still doing your very popular strength and conditioning course. And I believe there's some spaces still left on something coming up soon, is there?
Yeah, 2 weeks in London, Saturday, the 20, it's not this weekend, the following weekend, Saturday, Sunday. It will be in St. Leonard's Hospital in London, quite central. HDPN, I think there's 1 or 2 left. Probably none left at this stage, but you never know.
Worth a look.
You need to race to get there. But yeah.
I mean, you are one of my go-to guys for S&C. So if people are looking for S&C, which a lot of particularly soft tissue therapists and SDA members is something you might not have done unless you're kind of did a sports therapy degree or a sports rehab degree. There's going to be weaknesses in your S&C. So yeah, unraveling S&C for therapists.
And just on that one, it's like, as I said, it is very much around coaching and developing those. Like if you want to do an exercise plan for somebody with persistent pain, right all the way up to whether they're athletic or elite athlete or play sport at the weekends, the same principles apply, and we have to apply them in the practicals. So it's not all like lifting weights and stuff. There is a process for all ages and genders and levels.
Fantastic. And head to procaresportsmedicine.com for details on that, I guess. Yeah, it'll be down.
Yeah, or they can just email me is probably the easiest, which will be on my website. So that's perfect.
We'll put links in the notes for that. And then something that's very exciting, I think, coming up, which we kind of touched on, but I wanted a little bit more time on that, Andy Hosgood, is your Unlock with Andy. Tell us a little bit about that, because this, I think it's a great idea. Tell us how it's going to work.
Yeah, so on the principle, any business owner that's looking to kind of optimize themselves and try and unlock their own superpowers for themselves, like Andrew was saying, the kind of work that we do just help them kind of optimize their lives, their businesses, and their teams. So that will be, so we can work on a one-to-one basis, which is the kind of work I spend most of my time doing, working with business owners on a one-to-one basis and their businesses. But 2025, we will be launching a group project where we're looking to try and get 20 business owners to go on a journey together, where we kind of unlock all aspects of them and their businesses, helping them kind of create this community of very, very good businesses that can go on and achieve their goals really on a structured thing. So that's going to be a really exciting project to help create that community of business
That's across
owners.
12 months, yeah?
Yeah, the plan is really to take people on a journey to kind of help them over a 12-month to integrate, a lot of different things into their businesses. That's going to, hopefully set them up for the years to come. I'm not really about trying to create short wins in people's lives. I'm trying to make sure we give them, that analogy. I'd rather not give them a fish and just give them the tools of how to fish analogy, really. And that's something that we're really looking to push forward. So that'd be really exciting. That'd be with Andy Thomas of PhysiQuip as well, another friend of ours, one of the
Andrews.
The Andrews.
Andy, what is it about Andy's names?
I know.
Who will be at Therapy Expo as well, obviously, which we're all looking forward to. And if people want to find out about this, if people's ears have pricked up and gone, oh, that sounds exactly
yeah, to
what
follow that. So a lot of that will be on the Unlock with Andy Instagram, which is live, and content will be starting drip feeded in that. You can always find me on, my LinkedIn, which they can feel free to. Another bloody Andrew I've just seen popped up on it. At least, yeah, but it keeps it consistent. You won't forget.
Exactly,
That's what it's all about, isn't it? So yeah, and again, like Andrew was saying, feel free to reach out. I'm always helpful where I can be. So
you definitely are. Brilliant. Right, so we'll make sure these links to websites and Instagrams, and we'll go into the show notes, people. And hopefully, as it's only like about 11 weeks away, if it's 11 weeks, Therapy Expo will be here before we know it, so we can continue the conversation there as well. Right, before I forget, then next week on the show, so we're talking about, if you listen to the podcast, we're talking about Tuesday, September the 17th. It's going to be episode 213. 213 weeks in a row. My gosh. We're excited to announce that the Women in Sports Therapy podcast, it's all about podcasts, isn't it? WIST, not as catchy as Teacup, but it's kind of not bad. It's back. It's going to be back. It's in the process of being restarted with new host Sonia Fierro of Recover Stronger, who a lot of you will know from the show and also from Therapy Expo, and also sports therapist 𝐒𝐫𝐿 Pouzas as well. So two new hosts who will be resurrecting the Women in Sports Therapy podcast, and also they are going to be presenting a WIST Q&A session at Therapy Expo, which is one of the things we got the biggest feedback for last year. It's going to be on day one at 10:15 a.m. And I've just received news that Michelle Lyons, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, she is speaking prior to that, and she's going to join in that Q&A session, being a woman in sports therapy.
An Irish woman, isn't she?
She is indeed. Yeah.
She had a brilliant talk last year.
She's amazing, isn't she?
Really
she's
good.
fantastic. Michelle Lyons is going to be joining Sonia Fierro and 𝐒𝐫𝐿 Pouzas as well for that Q&A session. So there's your morning, I think, sorted out. I don't think that clashes too much with Andrew. Maybe I might have the whole morning sorted out now. You've got Michelle, and then Women in Sports Therapy, then nip over to the theatre for Andrew, and then fantastic. So that's great news, and they're going to be with us next week to talk about WIST, Women in Sports Therapy, and what they're going to be up to in the next year. So we're very excited about that. If you listen to the podcast and you want to join us live for that, then like I say, just head along to the YouTube channel for Sports Therapy Association or Facebook, and there'll be links there. But for now, before I must thank once again to Andrew McCauley. Thank you very much, Andrew McCauley.
Thank you.
And thanks, Andy Hosgood, as well, for your
Thank
gems
you.
of information. As always, it goes so quickly with you guys, but there's just so much good information there. People, if you do have questions, then I said this last week and it caught on a little bit. We're getting more comments now on YouTube. That's why we use YouTube. We favor that over Facebook because the comments section there is great. Whether you're listening to this or watching YouTube 6 months later, just drop something in the comments. It'll still show up on Google because YouTube is obviously connected with Google. So if you do have questions, stick them in Google, in YouTube, and I'll make sure they get answered. And I'll even approach Andy or Andrew to comment as well if it's something they can help with. So try and use YouTube if you can, people. Thanks everyone who joined us live. Take care of each other, and hopefully we'll see some of you join us live next Tuesday. Take care. Bye-bye.